Greetings. We are in Senior English B, and our project now is to turn to another one of the Victorian poets, and this man's name is A.E. Houseman, and I'm with you on page 1091. Houseman, contemporary of so many of these poets that we've been dealing with, and we're going to look at now two of his poems, To an Athlete Dying Young and When I Was 1 in 20 on pages 1092 to 1093. Let's go ahead and jump right into the first of these two poems, To an Athlete Dying Young. It's possible that you'll even be asked to write, for example, on one of these two poems. I think, in fact, on this one poem for you guys. And so it would make sense for us to understand what's going on. This is one of the most anthologized poems of Houseman's Poetic over. And reasons for that, I think, are multi-layered. Let's just say it out loud. So many of these Victorian poets are concerned or interested in loss, which would make sense if you're Schaefer working at the shoe factory and things haven't gone well for you and you're looking for some kind of sense of it all. And poets often are trying to make sense of the chaos of life. And so I guess it makes sense then that here we're going to see in Houseman two poems that will have something to do with loss and something to do with being young. So we're going to pay attention to these two poems from those two perspectives. Loss and something about being young as well. Now, let's go to An Athlete Dying Young. If I give you a couple of pieces of information, as I often will do, then the poem will kind of open up and make more sense. So let me talk about it with you. In Houseman's time, there were small little villages all over England, not unlike the town that you live in, where everybody kind of knows everybody. Do you know what I'm saying? And periodically there would be these days of celebration, right? Maybe in the spring or the summer, where there would be contests. One of the contests that often could be had was a contest of running. You would have some kind of a race where people would run. The winner of that race would often receive two things. One, some kind of little leafy branch thing that they would put on the winner's head, like the Greeks used to do, only they used laurel leaves. You'll remember the story for the Greeks is the laurel tree, right? You put it around the head of the victor. The very earliest Olympics, the winners would get a laurel branch. Now this branch has special significance because of an ancient story that the Greeks told about the god Apollo, and he looks down from Mount Zeus and he sees the beautiful Victoria's Secret model Daphne, and he wants to sleep with her. But Daphne is smart enough to realize if you sleep with a god, you can die. And so Daphne, when she sees Apollo coming at her, she runs, and Apollo chases her, and she falls down on her knees and begs Zeus, king god, to save her. And in the process of saving her, he turns her into a tree. Not just any tree, a laurel tree. Where when you look at the tree, it almost always does seem to have two prominent branches that break out from the center, which kind of looks like someone holding their hands up to the sky in prayer, like Daphne praying to Zeus. You got me. The Greeks love this story because Daphne ran from Apollo and kept her honor even in death. And the Greeks love to celebrate then the winner of their contests by putting this laurel leaves on the head of the winner, okay? And they didn't give gold medals or silver medals. They did this, okay? Well, in Houseman's day, you maybe got a little thing like this, but what else you got was carried on the shoulders of some of the people of your village. It's not unlike today if, for example, one of our ball clubs or whatever wins a state championship, there's a celebration, like, for example, getting to ride on the fire truck or whatever through town, ringing the bells and all of that stuff you see. Very similar. In Houseman's day, you took the winner, you put him on your shoulders, and you carried him around. You've probably seen this at the end of maybe a football game or something, where the coach gets picked up and put on the shoulder, right, and carried around. You've probably seen this kind of thing. It's an old tradition. Houseman is a poet. And so he has two scenes in his mind, interestingly, of the same kid. The first scene is the young man winning the race in the town. And hurrah, getting put up on the shoulders, and everybody's happy, and the kid, of course, has his hands up in the air, you know, I'm number one, and all of that. The second scene is a few months later, when tragically the young man died. He dies, they put him in a coffin, they take him to where they bury him. How does he get there in his coffin? 6 men pick up the coffin and put it right on their shoulders as they're walking the kid to the graveside. And it hits Houseman, because he's a poet, and so he makes connections like this. Whoa, this kid got carried on these guys' shoulders twice. First as winner, right? And then as corpse. And so it kind of hits him. And so he decides to write a poem. The fundamental essence of this poem is this question, and you want to write this question down. Is it better to be a hero and then go young? Right? So, for example, you do something really amazing and then you die when you're young. Let's say, for example, to be a great athlete and then you die. Is it greater to do that or to age old? So that, for example, you guys all go to homecoming and the announcer says, if you played football for Warland High, please stand up in the crowd. And all these people stand up, and there's this like old man that takes 2 hours to finally stand up. He's got his little sweater on, and he can barely stand there in the stands. And all of a sudden, somebody sitting next to you who's also old says, oh, you should have seen that kid, man, when he was a stud. Right? I remember hearing this, and they said, yeah, he bench pressed close to 400 pounds. This is a little tiny old man now. He's in his 90s. Oh, man, he was some kind of phenom. And you look at him, and you're like, you? Right? Well, we're aware of this. This is what happens to the body, right? It just starts to decay and tears up, and over a long period of time, as an athlete or as a hero, you can become what? Forgotten, right? Remember how Ulysses reports at the beginning of his poem. He's kind of forgotten. He once was this like superstar hero. Now he's just kind of forgotten, right? Everybody that knew him once has gotten old and died, that type of thing. So now the question is going to be for Houseman, which is better? To die when you're young and everybody knows you, or to live until nobody knows you? See, now think about the ways that at 3b, this poem's going to have some relevancy to us. We every day walk past people whose pictures are on cardboard sitting in our trophy case, right? Question, what is it like to be one of the people in the back? Why are you in the back? Why are you in the back of all those rows of people? Yeah, see, think about the nature of how pictures get put in there. If you get put in there, you don't get in the back, you get put where? Which is why the people in the very front of those trophy cases, lots of them you know. Some of them you were even participants with, right? You know their name, you know something about them. In fact, you even see them and you maybe even remember seeing the play or whatever. And of course, year after year, what happens? Right? That gets pushed back because we get new, right? Pictures. And then back and then new and then back. So the people in the very back, some of those pictures, in fact, now, Mr. Miller, our athletic director, is worrying about the fact that because they've been in there so long, that the color imaging is starting to go away, right? Because it's been so long. And the face is starting to fade. You got to kind of look at it to even see who it is anymore, right? So, which is better? To go when you're young and known, or when you're old and everything is gone? We're going to listen now to this poem, and we'll see what Houseman's thoughts are on it. Let's take a look now. Here we go. We'll listen to a professional reading of this. To an Athlete Dying Young.
To an Athlete Dying Young by A.E. Houseman. The time you won your town the race, we cheered you through the marketplace. Man and boy stood cheering by, and home we brought you, shoulder high. Today the road all runners come, shoulder high we bring you home, and set you at your threshold down, townsman of a stiller town. Smart lad, to slip betimes away from fields where glory does not stay, and early though the laurel grows, it withers quicker than the rose. Eyes the shady night has shut cannot see the record cut, and silence sounds no worse than cheers after earth has stopped the ears. Now you will not swell the rout of lads that wore their honors out, runners whom renown outran, and the name died before the man. So set, before its echoes fade, the fleet foot on the sill of shade, and hold to the low lintel up the still defended challenge cup. And round that early laureled head will flock to gaze the strengthless dead, and find unwithered on its curls the garland briefer than a girl's.
Now this is an interesting word picture if you know the story that I was conversing. Right? You've got two different pictures in your mind's eye at the same time. You've got the hero winning the race, and then you've got the kid being carried to his early grave. What does Houseman say about dying young? What is at least one advantage to dying young? You don't have to do what if you die young? Especially if you're an athlete who's broken a record. Let's say you've broken a record and you're the fastest guy. What's the one thing you don't have to worry about if you die young?
People breaking their record.
Correct. See, for example, we are joined by young Reddinghouse, of course, has done almost the impossible. For those of you who can't appreciate what it is he's doing right now in his season, he is putting up the highest scoring marks of any diver in the history of Laurel High School. That is no small feat. Trust me, I've taught a few of them a set in this room, and I can guarantee you that several of them before him thought, nobody will ever touch that record. Nobody will ever touch that record. And of course, guess what? This cat over here has done it. He shattered all those records. Of course, now the question is, okay, you've done it. You've broken all the records. How long now before somebody else comes along? Is he yet born? Maybe he's, for example, right now sitting in an elementary classroom, right? And in third grade or something. He's going to come along and break those records. Which is better, to never have to see your record broken? And this is always why, for example, in sports and stuff, if a record's about to get broken, notice who do they like to interview? Who do they like to interview? Not the person about to break the record, but who? You're right, the one who set the record. Right? What are your thoughts? How do you feel about this? Especially those records that have been there for a very, very long time. So in other words, the argument here is, as you age, the only thing that a glorified athlete can ever have is disillusionment, sadness. What's it like to be the superstar at Laurel High School? I mean, literally, everybody in this school knows who you are. Everybody in this town knows who you are. Everybody in the state who follows your sport knows who you are. But then, 30 years later, to come back to the school, nobody knows. What's that like? What's it going to feel like? You have become kind of forgotten. We often will quote Marcus Aurelius' classic line from Meditations, a 3B observation. Soon you will have forgotten all things, and all things will have forgotten you. Well, that's kind of, sorry, Mr. Reddinghouse. We don't mean to put a sad mark on Mr. Reddinghouse's outstanding career as a diver at Laurel High School. But come to think of it, it's kind of a strange thing. Which is better? Houseman says that as you age, the only thing left for you is disillusionment and sadness. Do you agree or not with this idea? Why or why not? So, for example, if you disagree with that idea, you'll need to come up with 3 reasons why you would disagree. That you can age, what would be the appropriate term? Gracefully? Is there such a thing as aging gracefully? It's an interesting question. When is the best time to leave or to retire? Is it right when you've done your greatest work? Or is it long after the fact, when you can no longer do it? You're, of course, familiar. We've got an important game that's about to happen here that one or two have followed and have some interest in. Of course, you're familiar that one of those quarterbacks is nearing the end of his career by virtue of his body is getting older, right? And yet the question is, if he were to win Sunday, is it the best time to just walk away? When you're at the top of it all, you've done everything imaginable? Or do you stick around and keep playing, even though you probably will never be as good as you once were, and you keep playing? This is always the question when you visit any kind of Hall of Fame, to ask, at what point did they leave? Did they leave when they were on the top of their game? Or did they leave after the fact, right? There you go, an introduction to the first of the Houseman poems, To an Athlete Dying Young. Let's now turn to the second one. You're going to find this one darkly ironic in a number of ways. Seniors reading this poem always find some irony, some dark irony in this poem. When I was 1 and 20, I'm not even going to say anything about this poem. We're just going to read it, and then we'll just work with it if you have any annotations. When I was 1 and 20, I heard a wise man say, give crowns and pounds and guineas, but not your heart away. Give pearls away and rubies, but keep your fancy free. But I was 1 and 20. No use to talk to me. When I was 1 and 20, I heard him say again, the heart out of the bosom was never given in vain. 'Tis paid with sighs aplenty and sold for endless rue. And I am 2 and 20. And oh, 'tis true, 'tis true. Now, this is an interesting poem. And notice that Houseman intentionally breaks this poem up into 2B. You can make this observation. Notice he breaks the poem up into terms of 2 stanzas. So you've got stanza 1, stanza 2, and we're going to ask ourselves what happens in stanza 1, and then what happens in stanza 2. First of all, how old's the kid? He's 21 years old. So let's just say it out loud, very close to where we all are now, right? Okay, 21 years old, and he says, when I was 21, back in the past, notice, wise man told him something. What was the wisdom that the wise man said? Spend your money, but whatever you do, don't give away what? What was his advice? Whatever you do, don't give away this. What was it? What did he tell him? You spend all your money. Give all your money away. That's fine. But don't you dare give away what? Now, what does that mean, give away your heart? Does that mean reach inside your chest and pull out your heart, commit suicide by handing it to them? No. Although we've seen that in bad martial art movies. No. What is he talking about? What's he talking about? Don't give your heart away. What's this? Don't fall in love. The old man says, don't fall in love. Spend your money, but don't fall in love. Right? Notice, keep your fancy free means what? What's that mean? Keep your fancy free means what? Yeah, in other words, don't get the ring that goes here in your nose, and then you can get pulled around. This is what we mean. This is the word picture. In other words, don't what? Don't tie yourself down to a woman. Yeah, that's what don't do that. Whatever you do, don't tie yourself down. Keep your fancy free. Notice the last line of the first stanza. But I was 1 and 20. No use to talk to me. In other words, 21-year-olds know what? They know everything. You didn't have to tell me. I already knew. Back again. When I was 1 and 20, I heard him say again, don't do it. Don't do it. He says, the heart out of the bosom was never given in vain. You give your heart away, what's coming? It's paid with sighs aplenty and sold for endless rue. What is rue? Sorrow, bad. And I am 2 and 20. And oh, 'tis true, 'tis true. Oh, what happens in the second stanza? He ages 1 more year, and what? Now what must have happened that's not spoken of in this poem, but referenced? What must have happened? He ignored the words of the old man. He must have not kept his fancy free. He must have given his heart away, and she jacked it. And that's the end of that story. And now he says, I know something I didn't know before. Now, let's jot down at 3A. How does this poem work with the famous, I was mentioning the Greek epic, or the Greek story of Apollo, Daphne. How does this one work with the story of Daedalus and Icarus? Do you remember the story of Daedalus, Icarus? Daedalus is the father, his boy Icarus, and he get put away in that castle, and they're trapped. And the way that Daedalus the father is going to escape is by building wings. And he tells his young boy Icarus how to use the wings and fly away. But make sure, don't go too close to the sun. The wax on the wings will melt. You'll fall into the sea and you'll die. The young stupid boy, right. Yeah. Give me the wings. Puts the wings on, goes flying. Loves the freedom of flight. Forgets that his old man told him what to do. Flies too close to the sun, falls into the sea and dies. How does this, jot down at 3a, how does that Greek story work with this story? What point is being made by Houseman here about 21-year-olds? Why don't 21-year-olds listen so well? Why? Why do you think 20? Have you tried to have a conversation with an 8th grader and try to explain something to him or her? How come 8th graders don't listen so well? They think they know everything. There's always been this debate about, we should have you guys as seniors go down and talk to 8th graders. One year we did this. And the seniors came back and said, they didn't hear anything we were saying. They could care less. All they care about is coming up here so that they can go anywhere they want for lunch. To which I responded, as opposed to what you were like when you were an 8th grader? Why is it a function of youth that it's so hard to listen to old people? Why is that? Our parents, our grandparents, people we work with, people who are older than us, why is it so hard to listen to advice when we're young? What is the reason? Jot it down. What is the reason for that? What do we know about young people? What do we know about old people that makes that so hard? What do you think, Beck? Why is it so hard for young people to hear what old people have to say?
Old people are dumb.
Old people are dumb. To be fair, what do old people know about your experiences in your life? Well, some. But can we be fair? You're living in a different time from them. Isn't that right? You could always find something that you now have in your life experiences that they didn't even know about. Right? So you can always say that. And to that degree, what do they know about my life? They don't know anything about my life. Wait a minute. What's this old man talking about in this poem, though? He's talking about the oldest of mistakes. Is it a mistake to give your heart away?
Yeah.
Why? Remember what Tennyson says, "'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all." Is that right or wrong?
Wrong.
Right.
Definitely wrong.
See, we can still have this fight. So, question. Should you fall in love the last semester of your senior year? I remember a student worked so hard to get into a very prestigious college in his senior fall. And he made it. He got accepted. He got accepted in January. Great news. He got money to go. It was awesome. And I said off the cuff, "That's awesome. Now just don't fall in love before you go away in August." And he was like, "Are you kidding me, McGee? No way." Guess who didn't go to college in the fall at that school? Guess who went to college at a different school where his new girlfriend went? Right. Guess who broke up with him in the first week they got to that college? Right, he slaps his forehead, right? And then he said, remember that poem we worked with? That stupid one about being 21 and the old man saying, "Don't fall in love." And I went, "Yeah." He went, "What if?" Well, there you go, guys. Don't fall in love. I've said that once or twice, I think.